Hi, my name is Anna. There was a time in my life when everything seemed to fall apart, my dreams, my confidence, and even my sense of who I was. It felt like I had hit rock bottom so hard that getting back up seemed impossible. But sometimes, it's in the darkest moments that we discover our true strength. This is my story of falling, breaking, and then rising stronger than ever. Before we start the story, also subscribe to my YouTube channel, Speak Stories. Thank you. When you hit rock bottom, the only choice left is to look up, and that's exactly what I did. There was a moment when everything I believed about myself shattered. I still remember sitting alone in my tiny apartment, staring blankly at the walls, wondering how my life had come to this. It felt as if the floor beneath me had given way, and I was free falling into a darkness I couldn't control. I lost my job. The relationship I thought would last forever ended without warning, and my health began to decline under the weight of stress and sleepless nights. Each blow felt heavier than the last, until one day, I couldn't even recognize the girl in the mirror. At first I fought desperately against it. I tried to deny how bad things had become, clinging to my pride and pretending everything was fine. But the harder I resisted, the deeper I sank. Friends began to drift away because I wouldn't let them see my pain. Family members offered advice I wasn't ready to hear. It felt like the universe itself had turned its back on me. For weeks, I woke up with a heavy heart, dragging myself through the motions of a life that felt completely empty. Yet, as strange as it sounds, hitting rock bottom was what forced me to truly stop and see myself clearly for the first time. There was nothing left to lose, and in that moment, something shifted. I realized that if I couldn't change what had already happened, maybe I could change what would come next. That thought, fragile but stubborn, became my first step out of the darkness. I remember telling myself, "Anna, you can't keep pretending. This is your reality now." But it doesn't have to stay this way. It wasn't a heroic moment. There were no dramatic tears or cinematic music. Just a quiet, tired acceptance that I had fallen, and that maybe, just maybe, I could rise again. And that acceptance, as small as it seemed, became my anchor. For the first time, I stopped looking for someone to save me, and decided to face the fall for what it was, the beginning of something different. Strength isn't always about muscles or pride. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to try again tomorrow. Once I accepted that I had truly fallen, something unexpected began to happen. I discovered a part of myself I had never really known, a quiet, stubborn strength that lived deep inside me. It wasn't loud or fierce like the confidence I used to show the world. It was gentle and patient, whispering to me to keep going even when everything still felt broken. I started small. Some mornings, just getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. But I would remind myself, "Anna, just take one step." I'd make myself a simple breakfast, even if I had no appetite. I'd open the window to let in the morning air, even if I wanted to hide from the world. These were small victories, invisible to anyone else, but to me, they felt like proof that I wasn't completely defeated. At first, I thought strength meant never feeling sad again, but I learned it was the opposite. True strength was allowing myself to cry when I needed to admit I was hurt, and to keep going anyway. It meant forgiving myself for past mistakes I had clung to so tightly they had become part of my identity. Slowly, I began to see those mistakes not as chains, but as lessons. I also realized that strength often shows up in the choices no one else sees. Choosing not to send that angry message late at night. Choosing to take a walk instead of lying in bed all day. Choosing to write my feelings down in a journal rather than letting them poison my mind. These choices didn't erase my pain overnight, but they reminded me that I still had power over my life, no matter how small it seemed. Through this process, I discovered that self-compassion was a form of strength too. For so long, I had been my own harshest critic, replaying every failure and every hurtful word in my mind. But slowly, I began speaking to myself as I would to a dear friend. It's okay, Anna. You're trying. That's enough for today. And sometimes, that gentle voice was all it took to get through another day. Looking back, I see now that the strength I found wasn't about changing who I was. It was about uncovering the resilience that had always been there. Buried under fear and doubt, it taught me that falling isn't the end. It's a chance to meet parts of ourselves we never knew existed, and in those quiet, unseen moments, I became stronger than I had ever imagined. After the fall, you don't just get back what you lost. You build something even greater. After months of learning to stand back up, I found myself at a crossroad. Stay in the safety of what I knew, or dare to build something new out of everything I had lost. It felt terrifying. Change always does. But deep inside, there was a spark, the quiet belief that maybe my story wasn't over yet. And so, piece by piece, I began creating a new beginning. At first it wasn't about chasing big dreams or dramatic transformations. It was about small, deliberate choices. I started by decluttering my apartment, clearing away reminders of a life that no longer fit the person I was becoming. With every bag I packed and every drawer I emptied, I felt a little lighter, as though I was making space for new memories and new hopes. Next, I looked inward and asked myself what truly made me feel alive. Not what impressed others, not what looked good on paper, but what stirred my soul. Writing had always been my secret refuge, so I allowed myself to write again. At first, it was messy and raw. Journals filled with half-formed thoughts, poems scribbled late at night, letters I never sent. But through writing, I began to hear my own voice again, a voice I had ignored for so long. I also stepped outside my comfort zone. Gently at first. I took a weekend art class, even though I knew nothing about painting. I joined a local hiking group, even though meeting new people scared me. Slowly, I discovered that trying new things didn't have to mean being perfect. It simply meant showing up with an open heart. Some experiences were awkward, even disappointing. But others brought unexpected joy, the kind that reminded me life could still surprise me in beautiful ways. Most importantly, I learned to rebuild my life on my own terms. I stopped measuring my worth by someone else's approval or by ticking off boxes on society's checklist of success. Instead, I focused on living in a way that felt honest and meaningful to me. I gave myself permission to move at my own pace, to rest when I needed, and to celebrate small victories instead of waiting for one grand triumph. The past remained a part of me, the heartbreak, the failures, the nights I spent doubting everything. But rather than seeing them as scars to hide, I began to see them as threads in the fabric of who I had become. They made me softer, wiser, and more compassionate, not only toward myself, but toward others too. In the end, building a new beginning wasn't about erasing the past. It was about embracing it and using it as the foundation for something truer, something stronger. And as I took each step forward, I realized that rising strong isn't a single moment of triumph. It's a journey made up of countless small choices, each fueled by hope and courage. And so, from rock bottom, I didn't just get back to where I was. I built a life richer in meaning, softer in spirit, and braver than I ever thought possible. And that, I've come to believe, is what it truly means to rise strong.